day I'm shuffling. Shuffling.
Shake that.
Hi, I'm Dennis with TeraFlex. That's Jen. I was just checking out the stabilizer shock on my JK here and noticed that someone has done some malicious damage to it. Just total disregard for personal property. Now, our job here today is to replace that shock and bring it back to its fully functional and pristine condition. Before we pull it off, I just wanted to go through a few things to look for on a stabilizer shock to see if it is in fact bad. So we're going to have Jen jump up in the Jeep and rock the steering wheel back and forth for us, and we're going to look for a couple of loose things on here. We want to make sure that our bushings are tight and that we don't have a bunch of rotation here. So we'll go ahead and have Jen fire it up, and then we'll just have her rock that steering wheel back and forth a little bit so we get a good load on those bushings so we can see what they look like. All right, Jen, go ahead. Okay, rock it back and forth. Okay, with somebody doing that, I like to just put my hand right on the bushing and just feel if there's any movement there. That's actually pretty good. You can check this one on both sides. There's really not a lot of movement in that bushing. What I found is I'll get these shocks off and the guys will leave the sleeve out of them. With that sleeve gone, that bushing will just move back and forth, and if that bushing's loose, the shock might as well be junk because it's not going to be able to do its job. Okay, so we want to make sure that bushing is good. The other thing we want to look for is any rotation on this tie rod end. If that tie rod is rotating back and forth and doing that kind of thing every time she turns the wheel, the steering moves a bunch before that shock will even engage and do anything. So JKs are usually pretty good. They run true. The stabilizer shock works pretty good on them. Okay, if we just look at the top of the shock where it comes into the bracket where the track bar comes in, we just want to make sure that it doesn't contact that bracket. If it sits there and rubs on that thing, obviously it's going to wear a hole in the shock. So just rotate your tie rod up and down and make sure that on the downstroke there that it doesn't lift that up high enough to make contact there. If it does, we'll just move this adjustment so that it just makes that shock come down a little bit so it doesn't ever lift high enough to make contact with that bracket up there. So just do a quick check there and make sure it never hits. Okay, all it's going to take to get this shock off is an 18 millimeter, and we'll just keep a 15 handy in case we need to do any adjustment on the bracket here. Okay. All right, well, we've got this shock in our hand. Let's just go through a couple of things to just check to see if the shock itself is actually bad. You know, aside from the damage on it here. We want to just push on it and just feel that shank. Now, obviously, if it just collapses and goes back and forth really easy, it's shot. And most of the time, what you're going to find is you're going to have pretty good resistance on it both directions. But what we're interested in is that first just 1/8 of an inch of movement. Just push on it, and if you feel any sudden and then it catches and starts to give you resistance, that's bad. You want to have this thing totally positive resistance both directions with no looseness whatsoever in that shaft. Okay, now we're also going to look and make sure that we've got our bushings in it, which just has the sleeve and the bushings both ends. So we've got 2 sleeves in it, so that was good. So yeah, it's a good quick way to do it. Let's take a look at this shock that comes with it. All right, so there's our stabilizer shock. It also comes with some hardware packages. Now, the one hardware package you want to just probably hang on to that and put it in your toolbox for later. You'll need it someday maybe. These sleeves that come with it, one of them is just loose and the other one's in a package. They're going to be the same size. What we're going to do with those sleeves is just slide them into these bushings at both ends of the shocks. They do that so that when you tighten these things up, you're not just tightening against rubber. You've got a hard metal sleeve to give us a good positive point to bolt from. Okay, we can grab the shock, and I usually like to just pull it in and out. Just get the oil cycled through. It looks like it feels good both directions, so that shock feels like it's ready to go on. Now if you have trouble getting that shock back up in there, just use your end wrench and just spread those mounts out just a little bit, give you some room to get that in there. Right. Make sure you put your washer back on. Yeah, when it's tight, you'll feel it. You have to bend those tabs in just enough to get that back into position. So you'll feel it cinch up. There's really no torque spec on it. Just cinch them up and you should be good. Last thing we want to do is just rotate the shock up and down and make sure that we're definitely clearing up there on that bracket. It's good there. And then the other thing we'll want to do is turn the wheel lock to lock and just make sure that that shock never bottoms out. You always want to leave yourself a, eighth or quarter of an inch of travel left in that shock, so when it's fully compressed, you don't compress it all the way. After watching this video, I certify you as a stabilizer shock installer. Congratulations. I'm Dennis with TeraFlex, and I'll see you next time.